The sun hung suspended over the desert sky like a blade, scorching everything beneath it. Abigail Clark dragged herself forward step by step across the burning sand, her lips cracked, her throat raw and parched with thirst. The blue dress that had once been her pride was now nothing more than torn rags, soaked in sweat and coated with dust. Ahead of her lay nothing but endless emptiness and a silence that felt terrifying. The wagons were gone. The group of migrants, the people who had once called her a companion, had abandoned her like useless baggage. Her husband, James, had died of fever on the journey west, and with his death, Abigail had become a burden in their eyes. Their initial pity quickly gave way to fear and calculation, until they chose the simplest option of all, to leave without looking back. Beside her lay a discarded water canteen, less than half full. Abigail sipped from it carefully, fully aware that it was nowhere near enough to save her life. Despair closed in on her, yet deep in her heart, a stubborn will still whispered that she could not fall. Not here. Not like this. Amid the blistering heat and the mirages dancing along the horizon, Abigail could no longer tell what was real and what was imagined. Her legs trembled. Every step was a battle against utter exhaustion. As darkness began to creep into her vision, she suddenly noticed a strange silhouette in the distance, standing motionless in the vast desert. Abigail's heart pounded wildly. Fear and hope tightened around her chest at the same time. As she drew closer, the shape slowly resolved into a tall, lean man, his stance calm yet wary. A rifle rested in his hands, his sharp eyes watching her with the hardened focus of someone accustomed to this unforgiving land. Abigail realized he was a native, someone settlers had always described with fear and hostility. Gathering the last of her strength, she begged for water. The man remained silent, merely glancing at the nearly empty canteen in her hand. When he turned and walked away, panic overwhelmed her, and she broke down in tears, clinging to her final shred of hope. Without a word of explanation, he turned back, stepped forward, and lifted her onto his shoulder gently, but with firm resolve. Abigail had nothing left. Before slipping into darkness, she caught the echo of birds overhead in the desert sky, as if signaling that her fate had just taken a completely different turn. When Abigail opened her eyes, the first thing she felt was no longer the desert's searing heat, but a gentle warmth spreading from a steady fire burning nearby. She lay on a coarse-woven mat inside a small shelter made of earth and wood. The scent of smoke, soil, and the surrounding stillness made her briefly wonder if she was dreaming. Every movement sent a wave of pain through her body. Her throat burned with dryness, her head swam. As she struggled to sit up, Abigail saw the man who had saved her. He sat across from the fire, quietly working strips of leather, his expression calm yet alert. The silence between them felt heavy, both reassuring and wary. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Safe," he replied simply. Abigail didn't know whether to trust him or doubt him. In her life, kindness had never come without a price. When she asked why he had saved her, his straightforward answer left her unsettled. "Because you needed help." For the first time in days, Abigail allowed herself to relax. She was still afraid, still cautious, but deep in her heart, something new stirred a feeling of being protected. In this unfamiliar place, perhaps she had been given another chance to live. Do you think Abigail should trust this man? If it were you, would you choose to trust him or remain cautious? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. The days that followed passed slowly in the unfamiliar village. Abigail gradually regained her strength, but the fragile sense of safety was always accompanied by a feeling of being out of place. Whenever she stepped outside the shelter, discreet eyes followed her, not hostile, but wary. She understood that she was still an outsider, a stranger allowed to exist here, but not someone who truly belonged. Kana stayed by her side, as quiet as ever. He didn't comfort her, nor did he reassure her with promises. Instead, every morning before the sun climbed too high, he woke her and led her out to meet the chill of dawn. The seriousness in his eyes made Abigail understand that survival did not come from pity. On the first day, he placed an old bow in her hands, worn smooth by years of use. Abigail hesitated, her fingers trembling. She had never held a weapon before. She doubted herself, doubted her ability to exist in such a harsh world. But Kana said only that if she wanted to live, she had to learn to stand on her own. Her first arrow fell far short of the target, bringing a wave of embarrassment and frustration. Abigail lowered her head, but Kana did not scold her. He simply gestured for her to try again. In that silence, Abigail began to realize that the road ahead would not be easy, but at least this time, she would not face it alone. The days of training followed one after another beneath the unforgiving desert sky. Abigail soon realized that every lesson Kana taught was not only about survival, but about forging her will. From how to draw the bow to how to place her feet on the shifting sand, every movement demanded complete focus and patience. Blisters quickly formed on her hands, her shoulders and back ached from the endless repetition. Each time an arrow missed the target, discouragement surged within her. Yet Kana neither shouted nor comforted her. He simply stood there, watching in silence, his steady gaze seeming to say that giving up had never been an option. Beyond hunting, Abigail learned how to read faint tracks in the sand, identify edible plants in the barren land, and navigate by the sun and the stars. Skills that had once been foreign slowly became instinct. With each passing day, fear retreated a little, making room for a young but steady confidence. One afternoon, Abigail's arrow struck close to the center of the target. She turned to Kana, her eyes searching his face. He merely nodded. Better. Not praise, but enough for her to know she was moving forward. And for the first time, Abigail believed that she could protect herself. That morning, Kana led Abigail farther than usual into rough terrain thick with brush and sheer rock faces. The tension in the air felt different, and instinctively, Abigail slowed her pace, learning to place her feet lightly, just as Kana had taught her. Suddenly, he raised a hand, signaling her to stop. Hidden beneath a thorny bush ahead was an animal grazing calmly. Abigail's heart pounded so hard she feared it might give her away. Kana silently motioned for her to ready her bow. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath, recalling every lesson, every failure, and the long hours of practice under the blazing sun. The arrow left the string in a moment of perfect stillness. It flew true and struck its mark. The animal staggered, then collapsed, motionless. Abigail stood frozen, the spark of victory barely flared before being replaced by a heavy weight in her chest. She had never imagined that survival could carry such pain. Kana placed a hand on her shoulder and explained in a low voice that life must be respected. Nothing is wasted when a life has been taken. As they prepared the animal together, Abigail felt a quiet, invisible thread connecting her to Kana, to this land, and to the new strength taking shape within her. One seemingly peaceful morning, as Abigail practiced archery by the riverbank, a familiar sense of unease suddenly rose within her. She turned and saw riders approaching from afar, dust billowing up behind their horses. Her heart tightened when she recognized the familiar face at their head, the man who had abandoned her in the desert. He reined in his horse and looked at Abigail with a mix of surprise and contempt, as if he couldn't believe she was still alive. His voice rang out, harsh and dry, dragging painful memories of the day she was left behind back to the surface. But this time, Abigail did not tremble. She stood tall, her gaze steady, no longer the weak woman she had once been. He demanded that she return with them, calling it where she belonged. His words ignited the smoldering anger within her. She spoke of the betrayal, of the moment they rode away and left her to face death alone. Trust, once broken, could not be reclaimed. Kana appeared at her side, silent but resolute, an unspoken assurance that she was not alone. Abigail refused without hesitation, closing the door on her past with her own hands. As the riders turned and disappeared into the distance, she felt a quiet victory settle in her heart. For the first time, she had chosen her own path. The sky darkened rapidly as fierce winds rose, signaling that a powerful storm was closing in. Kana warned the villagers to prepare, and Abigail immediately joined the rush of people securing shelters and tying down supplies. Tension filled the air as thunder crashed again and again, tearing through the fragile calm. A bolt of lightning struck near the edge of the village, igniting the dry grass in a sudden blaze. In moments, the raging wind turned the fire into a spreading nightmare, impossible to control. Screams rang out, thick black smoke billowed everywhere, and Abigail struggled to breathe, her heart hammering with fear. Amid the chaos, a mother's desperate cry froze Abigail in her tracks. 2 children were trapped inside a burning shelter. Without a second thought, she ran straight into the flames, ignoring the searing heat and the smoke that stung her eyes. Inside, The two children trembled as they clung to her like their last lifeline. The exit was blocked by fire. At the moment of deepest despair, Kana appeared, carving a path through the smoke and flames. They carried the children out just before the shelter collapsed. As the mother pulled her children into her arms, weeping, Abigail understood that from that moment on, she was no longer just someone who had been saved. She had become someone willing to risk everything to protect the place she now belonged. After the firestorm, the village slowly rose again from the ashes. Abigail worked tirelessly alongside everyone else, her hands blistered, but her gaze steady. The wary looks she once received had changed, replaced by respect and trust. She was no longer an outsider, merely allowed to stay. She had become part of the community. The peace did not last long. Riders soon appeared again on the horizon. The bad news spread quickly, and tension gripped the village. Abigail stepped into the central square, standing beside Kana, no longer afraid. When the man who had once abandoned her demanded that she go with him, his voice still carrying its old, hollow authority, Abigail felt only a strange, unwavering resolve. She answered with calm dignity, declaring that this was where she belonged. Kana stood in front of her, protective with a quiet but unyielding presence. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, their unified gazes ready to defend one of their own. Faced with that solidarity, the riders hesitated. At last, they turned and rode away, leaving the dust to settle into a heavy silence. Abigail let out a long breath, realizing that she had found not just a place of shelter, but true acceptance. From that moment on, she finally had a home. As time passed, the village slowly returned to a peaceful rhythm of life. The shelters were rebuilt stronger than before, the fields came back to life, and laughter echoed through sunlit afternoons. Standing amid all these changes, Abigail no longer felt lost as she had on her first day. She belonged here not because she had been pitied, but because she had shared loss and renewal with the people around her. Each day, Abigail did her part, helping rebuild, teaching the children what she knew, and learning from them the simple joy of living in the moment. At her side was always Kana, quiet, steady, a source of strength that never needed to be declared. Between them, words were rarely necessary. Silence itself was enough to understand. One calm night beneath a sky full of stars, Kana took Abigail to a cliff overlooking the vast desert. He spoke of his homeland, of values that must never be lost. When he asked whether she was willing to stay and share a life here, Abigail did not hesitate. She realized she had come a long way from abandonment and fear to strength and freedom. Abigail took Kana's hand and chose to stay. The painful past no longer held her captive. In the land that had nearly claimed her life, she had found what mattered most, a true home, built on trust, courage, and enduring love.